Forever Youth Pastor, Episode 1. My name is Jeremy Herr, and I finally built up the courage to make some stuff and put it on the internet. And so this podcast, Episode 1, Forever Youth Pastor, it will be called. And it's going to be stories of faith, love, and the power of compounding. These are things that I deeply, deeply believe in. I am forever a youth pastor because I believe that the greatest return on investment with the work of my life is to invest in the next generation, to pour into them faith and love and acceptance and community and belonging. And I believe that that stuff actually changes the world. And I want to be a part of that for the rest of my life. And by the way, if I can make some stuff to help encourage that and push other people forward in that pursuit, that seems really cool to me. And I want to do that. And I also believe deeply in the power of compounding. And if you don't know what that means, this podcast is just going to be a series of stories of doing little things regularly, like daily, over a long period of time, and just seeing the exponential result of that. I mean, how that works with money. Oh man, we're going to talk about money. We are going to talk about money. Why do Christians not talk about money? That's so crazy to me. Like the thing that we humans worry about the most, or at least tied for the most, and we don't talk about it. In fact, we're not just not talking about it, we're told to not talk about it. We're going to talk about this stuff. We're going to talk about the power of compounding, like how that builds and grows over time, how the power of compounding in relationships, how the power of compounding with stuff you want to make. If you want to become a writer, I have learned just write every single day. And like in 3 years, you become an actual writer because, you're someone who writes every day for 3 years and that stuff. And we're just going to talk about stories of that. And we're going to just break this down. And I'm going to make 50 episodes because I believe in the power of compounding. I'm just going to use this podcast as an absolute case study in the power of compounding. I mean, this is episode 1. And I'm going to make 50 of these this year in 2025. I will make 50 of these. And if there's any of you out there that are watching this, like hold me accountable to this because I need your help with that too. Because making stuff and putting it on the internet is a very discouraging experience. And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to see, I want to test my own hypothesis, my life hypothesis, and the power of compounding that like episode 20 is going to be much better than episode 1. Like I'm going to figure this stuff out and we're going to like grow and work at this and like just talk about some really interesting things and like being willing to like for myself to just be vulnerable and honest. And like I plan on being even more vulnerable and more honest in episode 20. And then when I get to like episode 30, it's like, man, we'll be rolling. And then episode 50, like, here's the dirty little secret. I mean, I'm planning on doing episode 50, but if I get to episode 50, I'm not stopping because at that point, like, this will be rolling down a hill. And I'll be so incredibly proud of myself. And those of you who will be listening will have been on a journey together, like an honest, vulnerable, authentic as possible journey. And I just like this, I just have like this deep take. Like I love Christians. I love Christianity. I just have a deep, deep connection to the local church. My wife, Laura, and I have been working in the local church in youth ministry for 21 years. We have been youth pastors for 21 years at the same small church on Eastern Long Island, and we love it and we believe in it. But the one thing that I have picked up along that journey of pastoring for that many years is like there's stuff that we as Christians really love talking about and we are so willing to talk about. But then there's this other stuff that we just don't really want to talk about. And I want this podcast to be kind of this intersection of the two. Like, we're going to talk about the same stuff. We're going to talk about the important stuff. We're going to talk about faith in Jesus and what that's all about, and like real, authentic, vulnerably living that out. But like, I also want to get to the stuff that we don't talk about, or at least from an angle, like an honest angle of like asking the questions and like not having to have the answers. I want this podcast to be a podcast of questions and a willingness to ask them and a willingness to kind of like struggle and stumble through it. And so we're going to journey through these things with like the premise and the epicenter of just being like faith in Jesus, and also like love. I believe that Jesus, like, he was being really serious when he said like the greatest command is like love God and love other people. It's like I have this deep seated belief that like the thing that I could do more than anything is just like love the person who is right there in front of me. Like that is my deep take on living out the Christian faith. It's like that person right in front of me. I just want to love them like to the very best of my capabilities. I just want to love the person who is right there in front of me. And the crazy thing is if you like, you do that, like you pick up so many stories along the way of just God working incredible things. This podcast is going to be a lot of stories of just like beautiful people that my life has intersected with, and just like this journey that we've been on together. But it happened because of just this deep seated passion I have to like love that person who is right there in front of me. And just at the epicenter of that, I believe the whole point of life, like you can live out compounding and you can make a lot of money and you can accumulate a lot of stuff. Like it seriously works. I have some stories of the ways it's like really just blessed my family. Like we've taken small amounts of income and turned it into a substantial amount of money. And the reality of that is that like, it's just the power of compounding, and stuff is fine. Stuff is okay. Like you can have like the gadgets and things. But my deep core belief is like the point of this whole life is about relationships. It's about the people who are right there in front of you, especially the people who are right there in front of you the most. Like my wife is at the epicenter of my entire like worldview. She matters to me the most, and I'm going to give her my most energy. My kids next. And notice the order, by the way. I I think parents, oh man, we just, when we make it all about the kids and our spouse gets less energy, I think it goes the other way. I think we give our spouse the most energy and our kids will receive so much energy from that. They'll receive so much love and so many tools for their future into adulthood from just that example. It will matter a lot. But my kids, like I've just been on this pursuit to just give them my deepest presence. And I just always want to show up for them and just make sure that they, besides my wife, are my most important right there. And so those are like my deep, those are like, that's the building blocks. That's the building blocks of this podcast. You'll notice that like everything we talk about is like those themes. It's going to be that stuff. It's going to be me telling stories of just beautiful people who have been right there in front of me, who have become just these wonderful friends who are just on this journey to like change their world and watch that change the world. That's the stuff that matters the most. And it's beautiful. But so here's the question. I'm going to have one question for this opening episode, and I've been thinking about this a lot. The question is Jesus proud of me? Is Jesus proud of me? Like, I'm going to start from a really personal note. As I think of that question, is Jesus proud of me? My instinct, I'm 43 years old. My instinct for most of my life, especially my adult life, is to hedge at that question. It's like, Jeremy, that's not the question. It doesn't matter. Like, oh, and by the way, pride has become this really like tagged bad word in Christianity. It's become this it's almost like a curse word. We need to stay away from pride. Like pride is just like this really like it just gets into ego and kind of the opposite of humility almost immediately when we even just utter the word pride. And so it's like, why would we even think in terms of like, is Jesus proud of me? But let me tell you why I think it's a good question. I think it's actually a really important question because it gets at something deeper about how we think of Jesus. And so for me, I think it's quite easy to think of Jesus as someone who loves me. I've literally been taught that my whole life, and I can't really remember a time when I didn't believe that. Like the logic of that. Jesus loves me. Jesus loves me so much that he gave up his life for me. The logic of that and like God sending his one and only son, this divine sustainer, creator of all things, had the ultimate solution in sending his one and only son, his greatest, like the most important thing to him, he sent as a sacrifice for me. The logic part of me just like that makes sense. And it's beautiful. But it's just never really been like a question for me. Like, but then I always just fast track that to like the eternal significance of that. It's like, well, because Jesus did that, then I spend eternity in heaven with God. And that's really good. And by the way, if I on this earth am on this mission to help other people find that, then like that's really good. And I want that. In fact, I really want that for people. I want that for you because it's beautiful and it's redemption and it's God, like it's our invitation into God's story. My son has this like new way, even over this weekend, we were talking about this new way of phrasing it rather than like this invitation to the gospel, like accept this thing and you get heaven one day, which obviously is a part of the gospel. It's like, no, you invite people to enter into a much bigger story, a story that's much bigger than themselves, a story that's not about their own personal pursuit, but about this much bigger, deeper pursuit that is outside of them. And it's also a participation into the biggest story of all, the story of the creator of all things. Like he wants you, he wants me to play a story in his continuing redemption. When you phrase it like that, that seems really inviting. And that seems really interesting to enter into. It seems like something really good and big. And like we as humans, these flawed, messy, humans get to play a role in that. It's really just good and big and beautiful and profoundly significant. And by the way, something we're going to talk about over the course of these episodes is like in this AI world, this coming AI world, I think meaning is just going to have this just like there's just going to be this absolute deficit in meaning. There's going to be an absolute deficit coming quickly about a lack in purpose. And so inviting people into this story, into a bigger meaning, into purpose that's way beyond them, this like global big story that we can be a part of, like with the creator of all things. I think we're entering into a time where we're holding something, an invitation to something that's really big and important and beautiful. And we have so many opportunities that are coming that are really good. So, like, the logic of Jesus loves me makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. But then when I go to apply, like, okay, but how am I doing? Like, how does Jesus think of how I'm doing? And I'll read passages like in Corinthians where there'll be a day where we stand before like Jesus on the judgment seat, and it says like he'll weigh out our good and bad. And I even asked I asked the people in my church the other day, it's like, when you think of that, what do you default to? Like when you think of think of this for a second. You standing before the judgment seat of Jesus, and he's like weighing out your good and your bad. What do you immediately default to? Like, what are you thinking about right now? Like just say it out loud, good or bad. You're thinking, like, I can read your mind. You're thinking about the bad. You're thinking about the bad. You're like, yeah. Oh man. Jesus gets to like those college days, like the stuff I did in high school, like my past, like the thing that I'm living in right now. Or like maybe you are like on this journey to just like even figure out what this whole God thing is about, but you're just convinced that you're not there. You're not cut out for it. You don't have what it takes. You're not good enough for that story. And like that's what we default to. What? But my question is like, why? Why do we default to the bad? Why do we default to the not enough? Why do we default to like, you don't have what it takes? Why do we default to Jesus just sitting on that judgment seat, focusing on our bad? And then even when we get to the good, we hedge. And we as Christians, we call it humility because it's a pursuit of humility, I believe. I believe like it's our pursuit of humility, which is good, by the way, which is just over and over in our scriptures, like, and over the example of Jesus, like he came not to be served, excuse me. He came not to be served, but to serve, right? He made himself nothing. He emptied himself. Like, these things are incredible. But in the name of humility, we talk ourselves down. We even like call ourselves names. We even like deflect encouragement. I swear, we as a church are not always a hotbed of encouragement. And I think because sometimes the encouragers amongst us get discouraged at how quickly Christians are to deflect encouragement. I'm wired to encourage as who I am. It's who my father is. It's who my brother, Justin, is. It's who I try to be. And you know who I end up giving the most encouragement to? Are the people who don't deflect encouragement. And you know who I find are the people who deflect encouragement the most? Oh man, I hate to say this, but it's the most spiritually mature amongst us. It's our saints, it's our leaders. And I think it's done in the name of humility. But I wonder how it translates when it comes to how we think Jesus thinks of us. What if Jesus is trying to encourage us through the encouragers and we're deflecting? What if Jesus is just trying to encourage us in general by however Jesus wants to encourage us? but we're deflecting in the name of humility. And so my personal story is like I did this study. There's this great book by Mike Foster. It's called The Seven Primal Questions. I totally recommend you going through this book and then taking the inventory. You should totally do this. It's so helpful. And Mike Foster, just shout out. Like he's done some really, really informative, good work here that like I think more and more people should do. Um, and he posts like we all have a primal question, and like each of us, we can find out like what our primal question is. And so my deeper story is that my primal question is, am I wanted? Am I wanted? And it's just so beautiful. Like Mike Foster really helped me with this because he helped me to come up with this primal question. And then once I found my question, I was able to like backtrack my whole story. And I realized like, yes, that is totally my primal question. Like that, I have been trying my whole life in every situation, like through elementary school, like through growing up in my house, through junior high school, like the most tumultuous time ever for me and for most of us, into high school, into college, into my early like career years, my life as a pastor. It's like, am I wanted? Am I wanted? Am I wanted? And there's just this chain of like that theme coming out over and over. And so Mike Foster says with my primal question, like the core need is to feel accepted, pursued, and to belong. Like my deep need is to feel accepted, pursued, and to belong. And it's why it took me 43 years, 21 years of a career, like working at like compounding my skills. Like I am just the ultimate compounder. I have like been doing daily disciplines for 21 years to get really good at things. And it took me 21 years to believe that I have the ability to like put my face on the internet and say words because of my core need to feel accepted, pursued, and to belong. Because I deeply feared that user 9746 would look at me and say, "You're stupid. Don't talk. You don't matter. You don't belong." Yeah. I wish I could say that stuff isn't real, but it's totally real. And I bet there are many of you listening or watching this that can relate to that. You feel that. And it's maybe not putting videos on the internet. It's not making things and putting it out in the world. Maybe for you it is. And by the way, for you makers out there, oh man, I'm so into this stuff. We're going to talk about so much stuff, like the daily disciplines where you can become someone who makes really cool stuff. Oh man, I believe in that process so much. So like hang on for the ride of this podcast, please. Like I would love to just develop a community of people who make things and like just help each other. Oh man, that would be so great. And that's going to be a constant thread of this. But making things is so scary. It just takes so much courage, especially when your primal question is like, am I wanted? And my core need is to feel accepted, pursued, and to belong. And by the way, Mike Foster says the core fear is to be excluded or left out. My kryptonite, he says, is rejection. Social media, as I perceive it, and I think most of us do, it's just a hotbed of rejection. And the ones who survive are the ones who have the courage to just keep making things and not let those voices both external, but let's be honest, mostly internal. Those voices scream like, this is crap. Stop. I didn't tell you this yet, but in a thousand days, I'm making one video, minute or less, short reel that I'm just putting out onto social media for 1,000 straight days. I'm on day 65. Yes, yesterday was 65. Today is 66. Just 1 minute or less. Just trying to like make stuff. To just put my ideas, my thoughts in the world. That stuff is so scary for me because my kryptonite is rejection. And so this journey that I'm on is to like face that. And this journey that I'm on is to also let people know that they belong. What Mike Foster says is that when someone is in a very healthy place, they turn their primal like question into jet fuel to help other people get the same question answered. And so, if mine is, am I wanted? Basically, the healthiest version of me is to do my very best to make other people feel wanted. And so, as I track back my whole story, that is exactly why I have spent my entire life in youth ministry. That is why I will forever be a youth pastor, because I am going to spend the rest of my life helping people to know they are wanted. But here's the thing, my kryptonite is still rejection. My kryptonite is to still question it. And I still wonder when I stand before Jesus or when I look Jesus into the face the best I can in my prayers, and I wonder what he thinks of me. I wonder if he's proud of me. I wonder if he thinks I've been doing a good job, a good enough job. And I am really happy to report that 43 years into my life, I finally believe that Jesus is really proud of me. It took me a really long time, but now I actually believe that. And now when we talk, Jesus and I, there's sure a lot more love and grace and mercy. And the craziest thing of all is like, it's kind of fueled me to just be willing and able to just like take 100% responsibility for me, for my actions, for the ways in which I fall short, for the ways in which I stumble and get it wrong. It's like, no, I default to now believing, no, 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 Jesus is super proud of me and he and I will figure this out together. I used to, when I stumbled all over myself, I used to just think, ah, Jesus, I did it again. I'm so sorry. Will you ever forgive me? And then under my breath, I probably thought, no, probably not. You probably won't. Because I just keep doing the same thing over and over again. You're probably just really annoyed at me and super frustrated at me. And sometimes I even went through seasons where I just like, I gave up on God because I gave up on me. And I wonder how often we give up on God because we've just given up on me. But what it actually is we give up on God because we've given up on me. But what we've really given up on is our idea of who God is. And the real question is maybe not, is Jesus proud of me, but is Jesus the kind of God who would be proud of me? And if he is, why wouldn't he be? If he is, why wouldn't he be? I mean, he gave up everything for you. And it's like, you're a mess. I'm a mess. We're all a mess. We're all just like, uh, there's only messes amongst us. I think to me, there's just like, there's a difference. There's two groups of people, like the people that will take like 100% responsibility for their mess, and those that are just hiding and pretending that they're not a mess. And for me, I'm just trying to land in a place where I'm just like, I'm just trying to take 100% responsibility for my mess. And that's like so freeing. It talks in Galatians 5 about like, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Like, I actually believe in freedom now. I really stumbled over like freedom, freedom in Christ. And like, I just never really, there's so many things about Jesus that I understood, like love, grace, mercy, compassion, goodness, kindness, like all those things, just justice. Those things just resonated so deeply with me, like in understanding Jesus, but like the freedom aspect, like if anything, I felt bound by my walk with Jesus. But now I believe that Jesus is like super proud of me. Like I don't have to wait till I'm like dead to stand before the judgment seat of Jesus and wonder. I think the answer is in. And like that's really freeing to me. It's so freeing. And I think that that's going to like, I'm really excited about just continuing to unlock that. And I think another aspect of this is like, I think what has kind of built up the courage to turn on the camera and like buy a microphone. I always want one of these. All my podcast people, shout out to my podcast people that I watch and learn. Like the world's greatest information is on YouTube. I do not understand why we aren't just going to school on YouTube. I mean, it's just, you can learn anything about anything from like the world's greatest, like the world's smartest people, but they have one of these. And so I'm just going for this. But I think the reason I'm going for it now is because like I feel like I now have a story that's worthy of being told. And so there's freedom there and there's courage there. And it's like there's transformation there. And I'm just super excited about this journey. We're going to shoot for 50, one a week, and we're just going to go for it. And I'm guessing if you got this deep in the video or the podcast, you're going to stick around. And I think we're going to have a ton of fun together. And what's cool is there's going to be stories of faith, stories of love, stories of the power of compounding. There's going to be so many stories of 21 years of youth ministry, of like just having this incredible, like, just so many beautiful, incredible, world changing people that we've just managed to like just stumble into their lives and like play a role and them play a role in our lives. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I would love for you to join me, but it's also this podcast is also going to be a case study in the power of compounding because I think we're going to get a lot better at this. We're going to figure this out, and it's going to be interesting, and um, we'll see what it becomes. But this is episode 1, and we're out. See ya next week for episode